Welcome to the Infrastructure Network, where we bridge the civil infrastructure education gap. Our on-demand video education courses, captivating podcast episodes, interactive virtual events, and tailored shows are all designed to spotlight innovative solutions and professionals dedicated to fixing America's deteriorating infrastructure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today's guest is Carter Hobbs, who's the Vice President of Double H Construction out of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yep. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
That's correct.
I was making sure I had it right down there. I wasn't sure. I kind of winged that one. But thank you, Carter, for joining us and being a part of the
Of
show.
course.
You and I had a unique connection because I saw a post where you were somewhere at a construction site and you do uncovered underground a electrical utility that you didn't obviously know was there. But before we get into that, let's do a little introduction of how you got into construction and working for Double H.
So my first construction job was straight out of high school when I was 16. I did low voltage wiring inside houses and security systems and stuff like that. Then I went to college to get my degree for construction management, and that led me to an internship with a local construction company out of Clayton, North Carolina. I did various stuff with them. I did utilities for a while, for about a year, doing storm, sewer, and water. Then for about another year, we did stream restoration. We restored about a mile and a half of a local river over in Clayton.
Oh, wow.
And then the next year, I did fleet management. So I was in charge of the whole company's yellow iron and pickup trucks, making sure they get serviced and they're running well. Then after that, my brother and I actually started Double H Construction. So it's owned and operated by my brother and I. And he worked at that same company with me. And, we saw there was a need for it. He was a grading foreman out in the field. And this is a service he had used a couple times in the past. He saw the long wait times for it. And so we tried to join in and fill a gap in the market and try to get in with some of these bigger companies.
Yeah. So as a sub, is that how you kind of started working for some GCs? Is that kind of the trend or?
Yep.
Okay.
So we started our first job was for the company we used to work for. They hired us in, and we did some culvert cleaning for them. They're opening up a new neighborhood, and the culvert out in front, connecting the neighborhood to the road. It was about a 40-foot run of pipe, and it was just completely filled with silt. And they couldn't pass inspection because of it, so they hired us to come out and clean it, and that was our first job. And we did a lot of that for them until we finally got in with some other companies being able to do hydro excavation, locating underground utility lines, which is what we hoped for when we started this journey.
Interesting. So you were clean culverts, the way it sounds, right? And is there a certain way you've done those? Because I've been on social media where I've seen these tires getting pulled through. Is that kind of what it was? Like, you see those before, where it's like,
you got to keep in mind when we first started this, we kind of jumped in blindly. We didn't know anybody in the industry. We didn't know how it was done. So we went out there for the first time, not knowing what the hell to do, what we were going to do, and how to even start it. So, I mean, what should have taken maybe half a day to do, what would take us now, I mean, we spent every day of 3 days out there just trying to figure out how to do it. We tried the tire method, didn't work. We tried long power washing poles. We tried everything. And what kind of worked for us and settled on is we would rent a 1,000-gallon water trailer from a local rental company, and they would have a 2-inch pump on it. And we would put a fire hydrant nozzle on the other end. And I'd be laying down on one side of the pipe with the fire hydrant nozzle, just flushing it all through.
Yeah.
And he'd be on the other end with the vacuum, sucking it all up. But that's back before we even knew there is equipment specifically made for cleaning culverts and everything like that. So that was back in our early days when. Yeah, trust me, they got something for everything. It's just a matter of the price tag on
it. Yeah, I'm sure. That makes a lot of sense. And as a startup construction company, you trial by error, so to speak. You just learn and gain that experience and that knowledge of how to clean culverts. And then you eventually build enough revenue up to hopefully buy a tool or whatever to clean them more efficiently. It sounds like.
Yeah, and that's definitely the road we're heading down. Like we first started, a lot of startup companies, smaller guys like us, they don't have $400,000 or $500,000 laying around to go buy one of these trucks to
Right.
do it. So, we're in this weird space of trying to get it done the most time effective and cost effective way for us and the customer, without using the traditional methods of actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that experience has given you to look at underground utilities, is that where you guys wanted to focus, like excavating underground utilities? Like,
Yep.
is that,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the
So
main,
that's what we started the business to do, was
okay.
locate underground utilities. The reason we took the culvert cleaning is, I'm sure a lot of smaller companies, you can't turn down the work that is given to you.
Right.
Even if it's not what we want to do, if it's going to help pay the bills, then of course we're going to say yes to it and try it out. But yes, we started Double H Construction only trying to prioritize underground utility locating. That's what our machine was built to do for,
Yeah.
and even though we found other things to do with it, that's its primary use, is
Got it.
locating underground utilities.
Got it. So over the last several months, I've been learning more about
Mm-hmm.
these underground utilities, and
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like it's like the Wild West out there with underground utilities.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It
It's
really is.
it's almost like we have no data as far as exactly where the gas lines are, the electric lines, and the sewers and water. It's a
Mm-hmm.
hodgepodge mess in telecom too, right? It's kind of all smashed in there
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
underground, but nobody really tracked it from the beginning, so to speak. Like, I guess
Mm-hmm.
where I'm going with this, Carter, is like, from what I understand, is like as a construction company, you probably have to go get permits, right? You have to pull a permit. You have to get something if you're
Correct.
gonna. Okay, you have to get a permit. I'm wondering why the city wouldn't track it there. Like, if you're installing like in a development or something, like putting in an underground utilities, wouldn't they track it like right
Mm-hmm.
there, like from the minute you pull a permit?
So yes, and that is what they try to do.
Try.
But as time changes, as more stuff goes in, landmarks change, roads change, all the measurements change along with it. So I think where the confusion comes from is, North Carolina 10, 15 years ago was, a sleepy state. There wasn't a lot of people here. There wasn't
Right.
a lot of people moving here. But now, I think recently I looked at it's almost 100,000 people a year moving to
Wow.
North Carolina. And as I said in my most recent post, all these people coming in, they need gas, they need water, they need sewer, they need telecom. And the lines that we put in originally just aren't meant to handle that many people. So what
Hmm.
you're seeing a lot now is people, even these companies, abandoning these water lines and just choosing to run completely new ones and just deactivate that one over in the ground. And things change. A lot of time, these utilities are laid, measured off the center line of the road. And like I said, more people move to North Carolina, the roads get wider, and your measurement that was 10 feet off the center line, that pipe might be under the road now because you
Yeah.
moved it so far over. So there's a lot of things changing. I think with companies like us in this area actually locating them and giving them physical records, a lot of these construction companies come out with GPS and actually put it in files of where this line is running. So I think we're definitely heading in the right direction as far as keeping track of them, but it's going to be a long, long road to actually get where we should be, to knowing where all these utilities are.
Yeah, because I would imagine as like you kind of mentioned to and alluded to, is like you see developments like I've heard of stories where they're putting commercial buildings over top of and I've seen it over top of a
Mm-hmm.
sewer, and there's no access to it. Like, how are you getting access to a sewer that's underneath
Yeah.
a building, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
impossible to get access. And I'm hearing these stories more and more as expansion of communities occur. You kind of mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the roads widen, everything widens. The older infrastructure just underground is just getting laid over top. Like
It's getting,
everything's,
yep,
yeah,
built on top of.
it's
Mm-hmm.
nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's hard to plan for this much growth all at one time.
Yeah.
So, when they originally put these lines in, they're, oh, we're going to be good 100 years down the road, not knowing that in 20 years, you're going to have a million extra people living here.
Right.
that need to be tied onto, or completely separate lines ran. So, it's a lot of guesswork too. I mean, most people could not have known all the way back then,
Yeah.
what North Carolina was going to look like in the future.
What I'm curious, what sparked your interest for the underground utility space? Like, just curious, because you could expect to any construction other than that, just curious.
Hmm. So, like I said before, my brother, he was on the grading side of it. So he had contact with a couple companies who do this. And every time we would call him out, he'd be like, man, it's going to be 4 or 5 weeks till we are be able to come out there. So in our mind, we're like, well, if they're 4 or 5 weeks out, there must be plenty of work out there to do.
Yeah.
So, and it's more or less in our minds, we saw it the entry level easier to get into because you only need one piece of machinery to do it.
Okay.
It's an all-in-one. It's not like site development where you need 4 or 5 pieces. You need 5 people to run those pieces. We just got one truck and trailer, and we were able to do it ourselves with fairly little starting costs.
Interesting. So it was
Mm-hmm.
easy point of entry to get into the space. You saw a void in the timeline, obviously, of
Mm-hmm.
getting customer
Mm-hmm.
service. Really, is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
And does that tie into like like the 811 system and like marking the with the paint and stuff like that? Did you guys have to? You're after they mark it, right? So you would come out and then you would excavate and you
Correct.
expose them. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm not, I've heard other stories of how it runs in different states, but as far as North Carolina goes, anytime you are going to dig in the ground, it's, kind of the law to call 811.
Okay.
It's a CYA thing more than anything, even though we've seen several times those locators will come out and mark it, and it's not anywhere close to that line. So they come out and mark it first. It's on the company that we work for to call them. So it's on their record and under their name. And
Hmm.
then we come and try to find those lines under the mark.
And so the story that you had on LinkedIn, we'll go into that.
Mm-hmm.
What was unique about this story? Because it was an electric line that I remember seeing. Or was it
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be something else that you didn't know was
So
there?
what had happened was we did a lot of work on that same stretch of road for this contractor. They're putting in a new water line on the side of the road. So originally we came in and located gas, water, and fiber on the
Okay.
side of the road for them. It was probably about an eighth of a mile. We did it every 30 or 40 feet. And they went to go start the project. And right as they're about to go put their first bucket in the ground, the 811 guys come out there to update their lines because they have to come out there every 2 or 3 weeks to update the marks. And
Okay.
they put a new marking right on the ground, right in front of where they're about to start digging. And so, of course, with it being a power line, especially, that comes with its own set of dangers, and you can't dig around that. So they immediately called us. We came out there the next day or two, and it just so happened the company who had bored that line was there. It was running right to that power pole. I think you can see it in the picture. It's not that far from where we started digging. And he said, yeah, I remember when we bored that line, we went almost straight down. He's like, that thing at the deepest point should be, 15, 20 feet deep, well out of the way where you're going to be digging. So, okay, for assurance's purposes, we try to find it. And 5 or 6 feet later, there it was, right under the ground.
5 or 6 feet later.
So, makes you think if that company who we're working for just decided to start digging and not check, they're going to have a bad day if they ended up hitting that line.
No doubt. And you hear it all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And you see it more and more as social media makes a lot of obviously content out
Mm-hmm.
there and posts about gas mains getting struck,
Mm-hmm.
explosions of houses, things like that. I mean, you start to see
Mm-hmm.
a trend. I can only imagine throughout the country, like, how many
Mm-hmm.
times a day this happens. I mean, just think it's
I think the figure was every 9 minutes a utility strike happens
nine
in the
minutes.
United States.
That is
Mm-hmm. And a
crazy.
majority of that is homeowners, people doing stuff in their own front yard or backyard, but also a fair, big percentage of it is these big construction companies, hitting these high powered lines.
Yeah. Which is interesting because my little example story was the
Mm-hmm.
Comcast guy has a line running from the back of my house up along. I was putting a garden in. I didn't know it was
Mm-hmm.
there, and I'm digging, and it was 2 feet down. Sure enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
that thing was right there, and I was like, "Really?" Of
Uh,
all places,
yeah. Yeah.
I had
No,
no
those
other.
guys, they don't like to put their fiber lines very deep. Those are the shallowest ones we have. And like you said, on average, they're about 2 feet deep whenever
Yeah,
we see them. So, people assume with these underground utilities that they are very deep, but you'll see these companies, I mean, they'll just scratch the surface and put their line in and throw it back on top. They're not really concerned with how deep it is whatsoever.
yeah, that's crazy. It's
Hmm.
literally like kind of what we said at the beginning. It was like the Wild West because if all this stuff is undocumented and out there, I
Hmm.
mean, how do we really track it now? We're talking about like what is there technology that's available to start really helping construction guys like yourself locate these things ahead of time?
So 811, again, we rely heavily on them. What they use, they have a utility locator. And for these main gas lines are the easiest to locate because the gas companies, they'll take more or less good care of the knowledge of where their lines are.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do is they basically come up with a car battery and hook up onto the line or a part where it's actually above
Charge.
ground,
Mm-hmm.
like a T or something like that, a connection point, and it'll charge the line, it'll send a signal through it, and they'll come above the ground with a wand, waving it above the ground. It's kind of like a metal detector of
Yeah.
some sort. And they'll try their best to mark right on top where they have the strongest signal. But a lot of these lines, or, a lot of these locators, you'll see the lines that they put on the ground, and it looks like they went out there with the blindfold on and started painting marks all over the ground. So even with that technology, it gives you a good starting point, but we've seen it be as far as 10 feet off, left or right, from that original mark where they said it was going to
10 feet. Wow, that's a lot.
be. Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
oof. And so if you have inaccurate data and then you go there and you hit it 10 feet off,
Hmm.
that's, I mean, that's a big problem. That's no wonder there's so many strikes happening.
Yeah, and we feel especially bad for our clients
Yeah.
because what we do is we come out and the allowance that they give you for that mark is 3 feet on either side of the line that they spray painted on the ground.
Okay.
So the general rule is if it's outside that 3 feet and you strike it and you did your exploratory digging, you made sure it wasn't there. It's really not your fault. But at the end of the day, you still could have injury, death, a lot of things that go along with hitting it.
Yeah.
So we'll start that line. We'll go 3 feet on either side, and we'll go 6 feet down. And at that point, we tell the contractor, what do you want to do from here? Do you want to keep going down? Do you keep want to going over? Where are you digging? How deep do you need to go? Because I mean, you could be out there all day trying to
Yeah.
find just one line. So, we try to put it on our customers' hands as much as we can. Always get approval whenever the original estimates go up and everything. But like I said, we spent almost 2 days just looking for one line because it's 10 feet over that way, and you always have in your mind, you're like, dude, we've gone 6 feet in either direction. Which way could it be? And the customer is saying, no, no matter what, we have to find it. We have to find it.
Wow.
So I mean, it gets very confusing at some points, and you find out very quickly that each job is very different, and none of them are the same.
There's no doubt, man. That's kind of scary as well as you think about the cost associated with that. Spending a
Exactly.
day just trying to find a utility in someone's
Hmm.
property is, I mean, that's expensive. I
Hmm.
read something or heard something about billions of dollars annually is spent
Hmm.
just trying to locate utilities, where they're at. And, you know,
Hmm.
the damage also is in the billions of dollars when you hit them. So you're talking about two
Oh yeah.
things. The cost
Oh
of
yeah.
finding them is billions, and then you're just, striking them every 9 minutes. That's another huge cost, right? Because then you got to send a
Hmm.
crew out, go repair the utility, and then it delays I would imagine it delays the whole construction process
Well,
sometimes.
that's a big part of it too. Is why these companies I think are starting to get more involved with it. If they hit a fiber line, it's not the end of the world. But if
Right.
they hit a high power, gas main or electrical line, their job site shuts down until
Mm,
it gets fixed. So you're talking however many people you got standing around, all the machines you got sitting around now not being used. You're not hitting your quotas. You're not hitting your daily production rates. It's a lot more that goes into it than just fixing that line. And I
yeah.
think these companies are starting to realize that when they could be shut down for 5-6 days at a time, losing money on that job.
Yeah. And there's some companies that go out and they call it a rapid investigation, or like a rigorous investigation of
Mm-hmm.
underground utilities. And I think you were kind of mentioning it, like you'll go out, dig down, like you're like potholing, right? You're like going down, looking for it
Mm-hmm.
every 6 feet,
Correct.
or whatever, you're going down 6 feet. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more? So after it's out 3 feet, right, from that mark, you got 3 feet
Mm-hmm.
on each side. After it's out there, it sounds like that's the responsibility of the homeowner, or whoever at that point,
Mm-hmm.
to try and find it or locate it. Can you kind of explain what that inspection process kind of looks like, a little more detail?
So after we do our 6 foot wide, 6 feet deep hole, that's
Yeah,
when we have that conversation with the homeowner contractor. We start off with, how deep do you really need to go?
right.
And if they say, oh, well, I only need to go 2 feet deep, we're just putting a ditch right here, it's only 2 feet. Okay, well, then we assured you it's at least not 6 feet deep in the ground.
Yeah,
You're good up to that 6 foot mark. So sometimes, they'll say, we're good to go. You guys can leave. We've proven we're only going 2 feet. It's not here. So we'll just continue with our work. Some of the larger companies we work with, they have a standard. They have to go within 10 foot of their lowest grade on the job site. So if they're putting in that same ditch, even though it's only 2 feet, company standard is you have to go 12 feet in the ground to make sure there's nothing under it. So that's when it gets a little bit more tricky and complicated. The deeper you go, the harder it gets, obviously. But we're out there for the customer at the end of the day, and they look at us to kind of be the person who's supposed to know exactly where these utilities are. And oftentimes they're surprised when it's not a quick 10-minute process and it's not 2 feet under the mark right here.
yeah,
So sometimes there definitely is some frustration involved because we don't know more than anybody else where exactly these lines are, and it's going to take a while to find it sometimes. So
yeah.
we definitely run in and button heads with people sometimes because they don't quite understand the process. Because we've seen in North Carolina, it is a fairly new thing. We've definitely seen a pickup in it and more companies calling us out. But I think it's just not the industry standard right now, but it definitely is getting there.
Yeah, it sounds like we definitely need some innovation there, and we need some
Mm-hmm.
standardization of some sort to help
Mm-hmm.
understand where these underground utilities are. Is there a
Mm-hmm.
way that, or is there a faster way of finding these utilities that you've been approached with yet, that might work? I've heard all kinds of stories, like you can get down to the centimeter, sub centimeter, whatever, right? Finding utilities without even digging, doing the rigorous inspection, so to speak, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really out there? Is the technology available to do that?
No, we've definitely seen companies claim that
Okay.
they can do that. But if that was true, then I wouldn't have a job. So, I use the example of gas companies. Most of the time, they're a lot further ahead with tracking these lines than
Hmm.
other people are. And they use the same commercial technology to locate it that 811 does, that you could go buy from your local store to use. And the problem is with the ground, when you're sending that energy signal up, there's a lot of things that can interfere with it. There could be another line next to it. There could be heavy metal rocks in between it.
Mm.
The list goes on and on. And we've seen people try to use these tools to locate, and the locator says it's 20 feet deep. And, we go and find it at 11 feet. So, I mean, that the
Wow.
technology is definitely not there yet for that locating. And I think it's definitely getting improved in time, but you can't rely on it for right now. We always tell our customers it's better to physically put a tape measure on the top of the pipe, measure up to the ground, than it is to get out there with a wand and spit out some number for you to blindly follow.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Wow. This
Mm-hmm.
has been very enlightening. I love the real, like, in the field experience you're giving the audience right now. Because
Yeah.
honestly, it's one of those things where you hear people talk like, it's underground utilities. We have all this cool stuff. We can find it pretty easily. We got ground penetrating radar. We got laser scanning, stuff like that. You know, it's like, but if it was never tracked from the get go, I mean, you really would never know. And if we were using
Mhm.
paper processes back in the day, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right, to write down where those
Mhm.
utilities are, and if it's sitting in a city file somewhere, you're never going to know like where
No,
that,
no,
right?
no.
It's kind of
And
crazy.
that ground penetrating radar, we've got called out to a job one time. They wanted us to locate the sewer lines running to a building. And he said, we've had ground penetrating radar come out. They drew us some plans showing where the utilities are running out. We spent half the day looking for these lines.
Hmm.
Nothing, nothing, nothing. And at the end of the day, what we did find was the septic tank the building was hooked up to. It never had sewer lines in the first
What?
place. And so
Holy
they
smokes.
they paid, I don't even want to know how much money for that the guy had come out with his ground penetrating radar. And he doesn't know any more than anybody else. I don't care what that computer screen tells you. It's most of the time it's very inaccurate. And, you just can't trust it at the end of the day.
Do you think that's from when we were developing these developments? Was there no oversight? Was there nobody like keeping track? It's obviously there's no one keeping track. They were just kind of guesstimating and
Mm-hmm.
writing down where they should be. I mean, we were using blueprints. You would think there's an abstract there of like data sitting there, but we were never really able to. Isn't it? I'm trying to figure out if it's an oversight issue. Like, how do we not know where the heck these things are underground? And it's got to be a beginning point somewhere where somebody didn't either do the job or didn't mark it. I don't know.
Yep. Exactly. So back when I was laying water line, what you would see is, a lot of these companies, they have the close enough mentality, and especially with these, water lines, which are pressurized, they don't have to be on specific grade to allow water to actually travel through them. It might call for it to be, let's say, 5 feet off the edge of the road. Okay, well, I already dig my trench. We didn't mark out the line correctly to even dig the trench for. It's 8 feet over. Who cares? It's going to be covered up with dirt. And no one's really coming in behind these guys to check these lines underground. You'll have local municipalities come out and make sure water's coming out the other end of the pipe, make sure it works, but no one comes out and makes sure it's actually where it's supposed to be at the end of the
Mm,
day. And I think that's where a lot of it stems from. As long as the pipe works, who cares where it is underground?
right.
So, records get crossed. The original blueprint calls for it to be 5 feet off of this mark, but like I said, it could be 8, 9 feet off of that mark, and
Mm.
they just didn't update it.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that's
Yeah,
exactly where it
yeah.
starts. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. I've been in, not doing the construction. I've been more in the business development side, but I went out in
Mm-hmm.
jobs and I was watching, the engineering firms. No offense, it's just sometimes the architect or engineer, whoever is on the site, there was no really oversight of it. And it's kind of like when you're in construction, it's like, man, we just want to get this done and get it out. Like I was like,
Exactly.
I'm not here to wait for you to come out and look at the job. Like I got
Mm-hmm.
stuff to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. Like if you don't have like someone there on site to help kind of guide where, to make sure, yep, that's right. Checks and balances,
Mm-hmm.
yep, that's exactly what we said it was going to be, or
Mm-hmm.
changing things as they're on the fly. Cause that's in construction. You got to be kind of nimble and like flexible, like to do certain things.
Exactly.
It's not the way
Mm-hmm.
it was designed for. You just think about it. I mean, especially if you got
Mm-hmm.
young engineers out there or architects designing stuff and they go out in the
Mm-hmm.
field like, dude, there's a massive rock underground. Like, how are we going to go around that? It's not going to happen, right? Something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I mean, it's kind of seems the way.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of it is like you said. I mean, these guys at the end of the day, these crews that are actually putting it in the ground, they're given by their superintendent or their company. You have to lay X amount of feet a day to
Mm,
keep on production. So, they're worried about laying their 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever that number is. They in their mind they don't care whether it's on the mark or not.
right,
As long as they hit their 100 to 200 feet a day and they go home and they finish the project on time, it's good news for them.
right.
But a lot of these companies just don't take into account 10 years later down the road when something else is going in, what's going to happen then?
Yeah, very, very good, man. This is very
Mm-hmm.
enlightening, Carter. One other thing I want to kind of talk about is these plastic pipes now that are going in, tracer wire, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the new thing now. What is your opinion on some of the materials that are getting put in underground?
I think the materials, we haven't seen too many problems with the choice of materials, especially in our way of digging with the water pressure that we use. We can't cut through PVC, we can't cut through HDPE, none of that.
Right.
And I think in my experience, these large gas lines that I've seen, it'll be a 20-inch metal pipe and they'll be encased in reinforced concrete.
Nice.
I think they're trying their best to protect these high pressure lines and, keep them safe. But it doesn't matter how much concrete you got on your pipe when a 10
Backup.
or 100,000 pound excavator
Yeah.
comes through and rips it out of the ground.
Right.
So, it's definitely, I don't think that's the issue with the industry. I think it's just a matter of record keeping and
Yeah.
finding these lines to begin with.
Okay. So not so much about pipe materials, but the other conversation I was having with somebody else was saying about the tracer wire. If it's not charged, and I'm still learning this,
Mm-hmm.
as more I talk about it, it's kind of like what you said about earlier. They would come out, the gas company would come out, charge the metal,
Mm-hmm.
gas line, and they can track where it was. But these tracer wires aren't like that. Would they hook it up the same way to the tracer wire to charge it so that you can track it? Is that kind of the same concept, but it's a plastic pipe?
Yes, it that is the same thing as just charging the pipe. You just got that little copper wire running on top of the pipe.
Hmm.
And but what's funny about those underground utility locators, is you'll charge that pipe, and from I've never done it myself, so this is just what I've seen other people talk about. I've spoke
Sure.
to people at 811 doing these locates. Is it has a lot to do with the frequency you put it on, and what's actually under the ground. Is it sand? Is it dirt? Is it rock? It's going to stop different frequencies from giving you a good reading.
Hmm.
So the locator might come out and just use 70.4, for example. And, he thinks it's giving him a good reading, but in reality, he's 3 feet over. And if he would have used 75.5, it might have been right on the money.
Right.
So I think, the technology, it's there, but, it still has a very long way to go as far as accuracy.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like, man. It's just we're still in a rough spot. We need better record keeping. And, I
Mm-hmm.
see it every day out in my city, directional borings happening nonstop. I mean, they're
Yep.
just putting in fiber or putting in something underground. And
Mm-hmm.
I always wonder myself, I'm like, and no one's really standing there. It's just the operators are just like, yeah, like you said,
Yep.
I got to get my work done.
Yep.
I'm going to push this out and get it, no
Mm-hmm.
one's overseeing it still. I don't ever see anybody stand there.
And so one of my friends who is also in the industry, he showed me a picture recently of a boring crew. They were boring for a gas line, small 6-inch gas line, and they bored right through a 12-inch water line.
Mm,
They went right through it. They pulled it through, and my friend showed me a picture from his crawler camera and going through the water line, and there it was, clean as day, just running straight through the pipe. So, I mean, you see something new every day. The longer you're with it, the weirder stuff you'll actually see out
oh yeah, there's no doubt. And the sewer pipes, we used to
there.
see it all the time. I mean, it just be a pipe right there. The storm pipes, we've seen them in store pipes when we were camming
Exactly.
those. It was
Hmm.
just like, and you want to kind of blame the directional boring company, right? But it's honestly, it's
Hmm.
we don't even know where the utilities are underground, so it makes sense that they're going to hit them all the time because no
Hmm.
one really knows where they're at.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
It's there's definitely just no telling what's happening under the ground right now.
So, what do you think as we end the podcast episode here? What do you think we can do about these underground utilities? What's the future kind of look like for us? What do we need?
Well, I think as we kind of get more advanced, I think the GPS route is definitely good. You'll see companies come out with Topcon and Trimble systems. The same ones they use to load the plans and make sure this mound of dirt is on grade. We've seen them come out there and set it on top of the pipe and mark it in their system. I think that would be a great way for the next step of the industry standard to be is these utility laying crews each have their own rover system where every 20 feet they mark a GPS signal of where this line is. I think that's going to get you a heck of a lot closer than what we're getting now. And the right route might be to send those into the city, for them to have in the records instead of these construction companies who come and go, delete their records. Who
Right.
knows what they do. You send your records to the city at the end of the job, and you have all that GPS marked under the ground. And I think that would be a great step in the right direction for all that.
I think you're spot on, man. And one thing that I'm confused with
Mm-hmm.
is there there's got to be some, like an engineer and architect, like somebody got to take the data that you just kind of talked about, like, and manage it, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
who's checking the construction guys to say, hey guys, did you dump your data for the day? Like, show me where did you guys track? Like, were you bored? Whatever, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is there normally someone that oversees that, or is it just the city?
I don't think anybody's really taking responsibility for it. The construction company, they might come and they might put their GPS mark on it,
Right.
but they sent the file to the project manager. He has it on a USB drive, whatever
Right.
it might be.
That's
He might not be with that construction company a year down the road. He might take that USB drive with him. He might delete it off his computer. His computer might break and it's off. There's so many things that could go wrong with that. I think if you put it more on the city for them, have a central storage station for all these things, I think that would be a lot more reliable than putting it on these contractors.
That's what I'm starting to realize. The data management system within these
Mm-hmm.
utilities and stuff in these cities
Exactly.
is important. Yeah, it's because and I've done the same thing. Like, we pull data from sewer pipes, right, manholes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We would know exactly where they are. Obviously, we put our cameras in there. We got all this data, but we would, or the engineering firm would hold it. We didn't ever get asked by the city of like, hey, can you give us the? I mean, it kind of changed the last couple of years I was doing this, but eventually they wanted the GPS data, but before that, it was like never even occurred to them that the data was that important. Yeah, it was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're looking at it like, oh, no one knows where any assets are in the city.
No one knows. Yeah. Well, if you cared about it when it was going in,
Right.
then we would.
Right.
Everybody would know where they are.
Yeah, it's a new world, man. Well, retirement's happening now. We got a new, hopefully younger generation coming in that's, just looking at data as much more valuable than it was before. So that's good. And I think we're in the beginning of a revolution of data management, so to speak. I guess that's kind of where we're heading. So that would be good. But Carter, truly appreciate your time here on the episode, man. It's been enlightening, and I love what you guys are doing. We need more construction companies like you guys out there and helping keeping people safe and stuff like that. That's super important. So thank you for what you guys do.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed kind of giving, our side of the story rather than, the homeowners or the contractor side. So I really enjoyed it. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And you have a great day. Hey, before I say great day, how can people get a hold of you? I mean, obviously you're in business, so that's, get your information out there.
So you can just find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way. It's just Carter Hobbs. You'll see me for Double H Construction right there. I have all my contact info in my bio.
Okay.
If anybody's in North Carolina and needs anything, just send me a message or a phone call and we'll get you taken care of.
Love it, man. Truly appreciate you being on the episode. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Become part of our network today. Thank you for tuning into the Infrastructure Network. We're dedicated to rebuilding and educating on America's infrastructure, but we can't do it without your help. Share this content, join our conversations, and let's innovate together for a resilient future. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights. Together, we can bridge the gaps and strengthen our nation. See you on the next episode.